So, you have some money, and you just found out that you can buy a zoo. Not a metaphor, an actual zoo. Lions, tigers, giraffes, the gift shop, all of it. Right now, a 186-acre private zoo in North Carolina is sitting on the market for $16 million, with over 600 exotic animals included in the price. And for a certain kind of person, that sounds incredible. You have made some money, you love animals. You have always wanted to do something different with your wealth, and now someone is telling you that for the price of a Manhattan apartment, you can own a zoo. So you start thinking about it seriously, and that is exactly where this video comes in. Because owning a zoo sounds like a passion project. What it actually is one of the strangest, most unforgiving business models that exists. And before you wire anyone $16 million, you need to understand what you are actually buying. The animals do not stop eating because you are having a slow month. The vet bills do not pause because ticket sales are down. And unlike almost every other business on earth, you cannot just close the doors and wait for things to improve. So let's go through what this actually costs, how the money works, and what the people who have tried this before you learned the hard way. Let's start with something most people don't know. Private zoos are for sale right now on normal real estate platforms, listed alongside houses and commercial properties. In 2024, a 186-acre zoo near Lake Norman in North Carolina was listed for $16 million. The listing included lions, tigers, monkeys, bears, and giraffes, the gift shop, the carousel, the train. All of it just like buying a house with furniture. But here is the catch. The moment you sign on that dotted line, those animals start costing you money every single day, whether anyone shows up to visit or not. So, let's talk about what it actually costs to run this thing. Start with food. A single elephant costs roughly $85,000 a year just to maintain. And that is before you build the enclosure, which can run into the millions. That is one animal, and most zoos have hundreds. Now multiply that across species that all eat differently, require different preparation, and need food sourced from different suppliers. Big cats eat meat. Giraffes eat browse, specific leaves and branches. Giant pandas eat bamboo, and it has to be fresh. Speaking of pandas, they are in a category of their own. Zoos do not own pandas. They lease them from China. The annual rental fee is around $1 million per pair. If a cub is born, there is an additional $400,000 fee, and the cub has to go back to China eventually. The enclosure alone can cost $8 million to build. That is a multi-million-dollar subscription to an animal you will never own. Then there is veterinary care. Zoo vets are not regular vets. They are specialists who need different training and board certification for each category: mammals, reptiles, birds, marine animals. A zoo with a wide variety of species may need multiple specialists on staff or on retainer. And when something goes wrong with a large animal, emergency surgery, specialist equipment, post-op care, costs climb fast. And here is something most people do not think about. Zoos take out life insurance on individual animals. There are specialty insurers who write what are essentially term life policies for animals from alligators to zebras. And there is also transit insurance for when an animal dies while being shipped between facilities, because animals are regularly moved and they travel on commercial airlines in the cargo hold. The same flight you might be on to visit family could have a snow leopard underneath your feet. Add to this stack licensing fees, federal inspections, enclosure construction, and maintenance, enrichment materials like toys, puzzles, activity feeders that keep animals mentally stimulated, and a full-time staff of keepers who work every single day of the year, including Christmas. Because animals do not take public holidays. Here is something genuinely strange about how zoos work as businesses. Most zoos do not actually buy their animals. Since the 1970s, accredited zoos have operated on a barter and loan system. Animals are transferred between institutions, often at no purchase cost, coordinated through a program called the Species Survival Plan. A zoo in Oregon might send a tiger to a zoo in Florida. A zoo in Texas might receive orangutans on loan from a zoo in Canada. The zoo housing the animal pays for all of the care, but it does not own the asset. So on your balance sheet, you have an animal generating daily costs: food, vet bills, keeper salaries, enclosure upkeep. You spend money every day taking care of the animal, but the animal could be moved to another zoo whenever the conservation program decides. And if something goes wrong with that animal, the financial and reputational consequences land on you. It is like leasing expensive equipment, being responsible for all maintenance and damage, and having no guarantee you keep it long term. And then there is the surplus problem. Zoos breed animals, but not every baby animal can stay in the facility or be moved somewhere else. And that creates one of the hardest problems zoos deal with behind the scenes. Most major zoo organizations openly admit this, and in some cases, when there is no space or placement available, animals may be humanely euthanized as part of population management. It's not something zoos advertise in brochures or public campaigns, but it is a real part of how many modern zoos operate. So now comes the most interesting question. How does a zoo actually make money? The obvious answer is ticket sales, but ticket revenue is fragile. It is weather dependent, season dependent, and as the Phuket Zoo showed, entirely dependent on people being able to leave their homes. The Minnesota Zoo during COVID cut nearly $8 million in costs, laid off 48 staff, impacted 125 total positions, and was still worried about whether it could perform basic animal care. That is a public institution with state funding behind it. A private zoo has far less cushion. Beyond tickets, zoos generate revenue through memberships, food and beverage, gift shops, and special events. Some layer in animal encounter experiences where guests pay to get closer to specific animals. These can generate meaningful revenue, but come with additional liability exposure. And speaking of liability, you need general liability coverage for guests. You need property coverage for the physical facility. You need workers' compensation for a staff that works directly with dangerous animals every day. Each of those policies is more expensive and more complicated than the equivalent coverage for a normal business. And certain states have strict laws about what animals you can keep, adding another layer of legal compliance cost. The zoos that survive, and some do survive very well, tend to have a few things in common. First, they do not rely on ticket sales alone. The most stable operators have diversified revenue, memberships that pay year-round, corporate events, education partnerships with schools, and increasingly unique experiences that justify premium pricing. Second, they control the cost of animals carefully. Holding popular, crowd-drawing species costs more. Holding species that require specialist care and large enclosures costs more. The composition of your collection is a financial decision as much as a programming one. Third, this is the part people underestimate. They plan for the gate to close. Whether it is a pandemic, a weather event, a disease outbreak among the animals, or a regulatory closure, every serious zoo operator needs reserves to keep the animals alive when revenue stops. So, could someone actually own a private zoo and make it work? Yes, but the economics require something more than passion for animals. You need to understand that your inventory breathes, gets sick, and ages. That is not a cautionary tale about a bad business plan. It is a reminder of what happens when a business with fixed daily costs meets a world that suddenly stops buying tickets. Most businesses can close their doors and pause. A zoo cannot. That is what makes it one of the strangest P&Ls in the world. If you found this useful, subscribe. We cover the business side of industries that look nothing like a normal business from the outside.